Yeah, so just simply the amount of annotating that we did for, I think I counted like 8 sentences. My kid was talking about what she did yesterday in English, and she was like, what did y'all do? And I said, oh, we annotated. She's like, oh, yeah, how much did you annotate? And I go, we annotated 1 paragraph. It was 8 sentences. She was like, that took you 30 minutes? And I go, it did. She goes, what did you write, Mommy? And I go, all the things. And I was like, you'll learn. Like, I'll teach you to do the same thing. So I'm like, when your teacher tells you how to annotate, bring it home to me. I'll tell you what she says is wrong, and then I'll fix you. It is a lot. Was it overwhelming?
No.
A good answer, no, but y'all are lying. It is overwhelming. It is overwhelming at first. It is pretty slow at first. It does get faster as you learn how to do it. You learn what I'm looking for. It does get faster, okay? So, just so you know, the other thing is I know that like trying to find, you'll hear me say no a lot to you. I mean, all year long I'll say no a lot, but I will stop you before you get into summary. So if I'm asking you for something, a lot of times what y'all tend to do is you tend to go directly to summary. You don't mean to, it's just all you know. So I'm going to stop you before you get there. I'm going to be like, nope, this is what I'm looking for. So when we're in this whole process, the sooner that you can hear yourself giving summary compared to like questions that I'm looking for, the better. That takes some time, but we'll get there. Okay, so let's jump in. We got through paragraph 2. So let's jump into paragraph 3. All right. A great people has moved to defend a great nation. Terrorist attacks can shake the foundations of our biggest buildings, but they cannot touch the foundation of America. These acts shatter steel, but they cannot dent the steel of American resolve. America was targeted for attack because we're the brightest beacon for freedom and opportunity in the world. And no one will keep that light from shining. Today, our nation saw evil, the very worst of human nature, and we responded with the best of America. With the daring of our rescue workers, with the caring for strangers and neighbors who came to give blood and help in any way they could. All right. Start from the top down with your partner. Talk about what do you like in there that you would want to annotate. Ready, set, go.
Maybe like great.
Kyle, if you want to come over to Kelsey, you can, or if you want to talk to them, it's either one. Karma.
Maybe help in any way that yeah, I have like my classes that I want to do and I have yeah, like today in 7th grade, I think was at like the study conference. Yeah, I don't.
All right, working from our top down, I'm asking for evidence. I'm not asking for analysis or labels or anything right now. I'm just asking for what evidence do you like in there? What are we marking? Keldon?
Great people, great nation.
Okay. It's repetition. Kind of boring, but yep. What else? That was a sad cry. What else do you like in there?
Well, it kind of does that repetition until about half, and then it stops. It's like kind of the same thing with like foundation.
Okay.
Steel.
Look bigger. Look bigger. Kyle?
It says like the bad that was done and then the good America responded with.
Okay, we're skipping through. Go back to the idea of foundations. It's not repeating foundations. It's a what? It's a metaphor. Shake the foundation of our biggest buildings. Now listen, it can be a compare or contrast. I don't need a metaphor or simile. You don't have to do that, but a compare or contrast. So remember when we see repetition, we want to look bigger. So just so you can see if you're missing anything else, right? When we talk about repetition, what's attached to it. So when you step back a little bit, you can see that. So shake the foundations of our biggest buildings. And then the conjunction, thank you, cannot touch the foundation of America. So we do have like a metaphor. And Andrew, you were right. What did you call it too?
Juxtaposition.
Can you tell us what a juxtaposition is?
Brings two different things.
Yeah. So a juxtaposition technically is like a like opposite contrast or a contrast of structure, right? So here it is the contrast, right? And the but suggests the contrast, right? And Kyle, was it you that said like what's good, like what happened to us first and then how we responded? So that's what we're looking at before and after. So y'all are all right, okay? We had talked about steel. What else do we need to look at when we look at the steel? These acts shatter steel. And then again, what? But cannot dent the steel of American resolve. So again, we have action verbs as well, but we still have a metaphor, still have the juxtaposition. We now have action verbs in there. America was targeted for attack because we're the brightest beacon for freedom and opportunity in the world. What's a beacon? Yep. Yeah, it's a signal. So it like a beacon on a lighthouse is what helps to get people in safely, right? Okay. So again, we are the brightest beacon. What is that? What are we labeling that? I mean, it still, again, is a metaphor.
Symbolicism?
It's symbolic, yeah. I mean, it could be symbolic as too. For literature is heavy in symbolism, right? We don't necessarily talk about symbolism unless it is like a motif that's repeated throughout, which sometimes we'll see. But yeah, I mean, that beacon of light, that's what you could also talk about when we get to the analysis part in skill 4, so keep that. Okay? Now, let's go. Today our nation saw evil. Now remember yesterday I talked about the dashes and how the dashes then weren't intended. It was a stumble. This is not a stumble. It is intended. So we will just label it dashes. Now sometimes you have just one dash. You have something and then a dash and then something after it. Sometimes you have what we have here where we have something dash, more info, dash, the finish, right? So what we will look at when we look at it is what comes before and what comes after and what's the value bringing in that dash itself. We'll talk about that when we get there. Anything else in there? Yeah, I mean, that goes, we're going to keep that with the dashes, right? I mean, I would look at more action verbs. The daring of our rescue workers, caring for strangers, giving blood, helping, right? So these are like all the actions taken. Okay. I feel like we can group all these together when we're now looking at rhetorical situation. Because since we have so many like metaphors and like action verbs within there, I think we can tie it all together. So remember, when we're talking about rhetorical situation, we're not making things up. We are using things from here. So turn to your partner. Let's get a little bit of variety in how we're tying it into the rhetorical situation. You got 1 minute. Ready, set, go.
Are those all actual uniforms? Because they're mediums.
Huh?
I said, are those all actual uniforms?
Yeah,
'Cause
they're
mediums.
Yeah.
Are they supposed to make y'all look big?
Yeah.
Okay.
This is actually a large.
Oh my God. And your pads fit underneath there and everything?
Yeah, somewhat.
Tightly? Like you
Yeah,
gotta-
it's hard to take them off once the game's done.
Yeah. It's like getting a wet sports bra. Like it's hard. Yeah.
Like you have to bend over, someone has to pull it
Pull
off.
out.
Like hands in the air.
Yeah. Yeah. We could, yeah.
I guess that's two sides. Alright, yeah, I was thinking maybe like leverage for all these all these just kind of things that
All right.
people are not to tell.
Rhetorical situation. What am I connecting it to? Okay, what specific audience are we looking at? Yeah? Good? Okay, what else? Wilbur?
I see like leverage in the last few action verbs, like rescue, caring, stuff like that. I see unified capability.
Okay. Good.
The purpose is reaffirming strength.
Yeah. So here's, somebody said this earlier. Now listen, if his whole purpose is reaffirm the country's strength, then we should be able to attach every piece of evidence to that, right? So when we look at it, we want to look at, we already know whatever part we know of the purpose, either the understand or the do. We won't connect the rhetorical situation to whatever we know because that's the whole purpose. But we can connect it to like whatever we don't know. So if we go, okay, what does he want us to do now that he's reaffirming the country's strength? What is this making us want to do? So you could start kind of guessing as you work your way through if you want to tie it to that. Does that make sense? The purpose is the whole thing. It'll always be that. But we're looking for what the other part of the purpose is that we don't know. So if you want to start connecting it to that, you can kind of start guessing the part that you don't have, like the do or the understand, right? Okay, what else? What else, Shifa? Okay, why context?
Because it describes like the shaping of the foundation.
But the context of like is what's happening in the like part right then. So I don't know, like that is actually what is being done, but I don't know if we need, if that ties to the context.
So with that,
Maybe the context would be that, like, Americans are all helping, I guess.
That's summary.
It's summary. Oh, look at you noticing summary. Yeah. He just called you out. He just called you out.
It could be another leverage, like that emotional appeal for that said American people.
Okay, say that again. The leverage what?
Emotional appeal for American people, like evil, like
The American, so he's leveraging like the, if we go back to our list, like the fear and the shock.
and now it's this time positive, and it's like, oh, we have not been broken and such.
Okay, so American, yep, so he's leveraging that. Okay. All right, that works for me. All right, let's go to the next paragraph. Immediately following the first attack, I implemented our government's emergency response plans. Our military is powerful and it's prepared. Our emergency teams are working in New York City and Washington, D.C. to help with local rescue efforts. Our first priority is to get help to those who have been injured and to take every precaution to protect our citizens at home and around the world from further attacks. The functions of our government continue without interruption. Federal agencies in Washington, which had to be evacuated today, are reopening for essential personnel tonight and will be open for business tomorrow. Our financial institutions remain strong and the American economy will be open for business as well. What do we like in there that we're noticing?
Like the things are just coming back at like not even like 12 hours after. It's like things are.
Keldon.
Oh yeah.
Your summary, dude.
Good. Anaya.
He's saying R a lot. So when he says R, is he talking about R as in the government or R as in America?
Well, I think it's everything, right? So when we look at our, we're going to look at like what's attached to it. So our military, our emergency teams, our priority, our citizens, our government, our financial institutions. Is that all of them? All right, so we have the repetition, and we're looking at what's attached to it. Now I also want to look at like what is he saying about those things. So look at what he says. So powerful, prepared, working, help, precautions, continue, remain, right? So we're looking at action verbs and descriptors. So when y'all were taught to like, and we'll get embedding in skill 4, but when y'all were taught to embed, were y'all taught like not to quote more than a certain amount of text, like in a passing?
No.
Liar, I know Lloyd has taught y'all that. Okay, we don't use ellipses in here. We don't use ellipses in here because one, y'all use them wrong. Secondly, we don't do, we tend to not do like more than like 1.5 lines of you writing. We don't want that. But if we're looking at this, we're like, oh God, that's a lot, right? I'll teach you once we get there how we would embed that, how we would use all that text, right? Because just our military is powerful is not as strong as a piece of evidence as our military, our emergency teams, our priority, our citizens, right? Like that, the strength comes in the numbers, literally. Okay, so now let's look at the rhetorical situation. Where is the rhetorical situation? How can we connect it?
Audience,
Okay, what audience?
first responders.
Okay, I think that's a give me, right? Like anybody that's listed in there, we would say wouldn't really, like, I mean, that's a give me answer. What else an audience? Wilbur?
Connecting to the context, like the strong economy at the time.
Okay.
How they're so to keep things open.
Okay, so yeah, so the strength of our economy. Okay, yep, I would go with that. Keldon?
Leverage like America's resiliency.
Well, what are we leveraging? We don't have resilience in there. Keep that in mind for something, but
Desire for, I don't know.
I mean, he could leverage a desire for action because he's showing action, right? So you could say desire for action because he's showing our actions. What else? Yep.
I feel like a bounce back, like you say, your effect has not done the action. The actual attack has not affected anything that matters.
Yep. You're getting into skill 4. Slow down. Not there yet. But yes, you're right. Okay. That works for me. That's good for now. All right. You know what? I could also say that he, like, as a speaker, like, he's leveraging his role as, like, a, like, world leader, or as the power that he holds, right? What does that squiggly mark mean? Shift. So we think it's the shift. Good job. We think it's the shift. We don't know. We have to read. Do we feel like there's a shift so far that we've read? Now listen, when we talk about a shift, we talk about, well, I'll always want you to identify a tone with it, but then there's also something else that we're looking for, right? So our shift is going to show, before the shift, it'll be like one little main idea, and then after the shift will be another main idea, right? Our message. Those two things will come together to help reaffirm the country's strength, right? So the other thing that we look for in shifts is sometimes it's a shift in perspective. Sometimes it's a shift in time, in reference to time. So far, have you heard any kind of shift in, like, a lot of times tone comes first. Do you hear a shift in, like, the way he's talking? Not really, not yet. So we just keep reading. The search is underway for those who were behind these evil acts. I have directed the full resources of our intelligence and law enforcement communities to find those responsible and to bring them to justice. We will make no distinction between the terrorists who committed these acts and those who harbor them. Okay, we see the little squiggly mark. We get done. Do you hear a shift in there? Don't give me an answer that I want.
Well, it gives a shift from like somewhat semi-past to future.
Okay. I completely agree. Do you hear a shift in tone at all?
Yeah. Like now they're like saying like, oh, like reassuring the safety on the top, and then on the bottom it's like.
I need a buzzer. Bzz. Oh my God, I'm going to get me a buzzer. Bzz. That'll be when we have summary. Okay. Talk about tone, how it sounds. Our financial institutions remain strong. The economy will be open for business tomorrow. We will make no distinction between the terrorists who committed these acts and those who harbor them. Miley?
I mean, I just think the tone sounds a lot more like vengeful.
Okay.
Instead of like hopeful and like reassuring, it's more like.
Okay, so what I want you to hear is when you hear a shift in tone, we're probably going to find a shift in like purposes, main ideas. Okay, so let's say for now we will mark the shift. And we always want to talk about like what is before, and right now we don't really know what's after. But going with what Andrew said, the idea of like the present and future, so I always think of timing in like past, present, future. So if you want to kind of look at it this way, right? This is the past, meaning that morning, right? And then we move in to the present, right? That night. Does that make sense? So sometimes past is way past. Sometimes present is true present. But I can look at it and say past, present, and then looking at future. So I could say past and present. And then below, I'm thinking that it might be a little bit more of future. And then for tone, so we'll check this later because we have tone words that we need to look, but I know kind of where we're going to run out of time. But so we'll look at hopeful. We have a tone list. We will start looking up words, and if I don't get done, we'll come back to this, and then we'll do vengeful. It's really important for us to choose the most accurate tone words, because if we don't, like words have power. So if we choose something that doesn't really fit the rhetorical situation, right, then it doesn't fit. So if we look at vengeful, that we're just going to stay with that for right now. Do we want a president that is speaking on the international level to show vengefulness? Not me. Not me. So I would say we could leave this for now, but we know we kind of want to go in that realm, but more presidential, right? Okay, so I'm going to highlight this so I remember to come back to it. So y'all remind me if we don't get done that we have to do this on Monday, okay? All right, what do we like in paragraph 5, though? So if we said, like Miley said, like it sounds like it's more vengeful, we don't want to talk about, I gave you the diction talk yesterday, right? Like we don't want to just, like what is diction? Word choice. We don't want to just go in and pull out single words, because diction is word choice, meaning authors use words, as opposed to what else would they use?
Is that just splitting up the sentence? Like, it's both the things and a thread.
Say that again?
He's not splitting it up and like, there's no just like puzzle shit. It's all one massive blob chunk in the paragraph.
Okay. What do you mean? Keep going.
Like the search for those who have made behind the evil acts and flow and intelligence, like all a thread.
Okay.
Even there's no like puzzle jump.
Okay, let me see if I can translate what you're saying, because I think you're going in the right direction. So these are like actions, right? Directed, our intelligence, our law enforcement communities, to find, to bring, right? Those are our actions. I think, Andrew, this is kind of what you're saying. And then he groups our actions with their actions, right? Those who committed, and then who harbor. So those are our actions. And then these are like the, I don't want to say labels, examples of who's going to get our actions. Close. All right. Rhetorical situation. Who are we tying it to? Or what are we tying it to?
Terrorists.
Okay. Audience could be terrorists. Okay. What else?
You can do like the ought there, because he says like, I have directed, like he says like ought he's going to do. It's because he's like the president.
Yep. So the speaker is showing like his power as president. Okay.
Back to the audience, I would say maybe allies and stuff, because at this time we didn't know if we were going to go to war or not.
Yeah. I mean, it's also telling our allies like what we're looking for, right, Kyle?
Exigence is like he's addressing what they're gonna do next.
Yeah, because we talked about the action, right? Like what actions, like for exigence, we had to, like why now? Like he had to wait for all the info. So this is showing a plan because he had to wait for all that information. Good. All right. time we get out of here? 10. Okay. All right. Paragraph 6. I appreciate so very much the members of Congress who have joined me in strongly condemning these attacks. And on behalf of the American people, I thank the many world leaders who have called to offer their condolences and assistance. America and our friends and allies join with all those who want peace and security in the world, and we stand together to win the war against terrorism. Wilbur?
Shift immediately. It went from like up and down, but then just straight to condolences and more hopeful.
Okay, I mean, I think it could be a shift in tone, maybe, unless we do the right tone for before. But here's what I'm going to say. You can, as we're working together, we're going to choose the same spot for a shift. And once we get to planning, we can talk a little bit more about this. But when y'all are reading and doing stuff on your own or like with a partner, everybody might have a different shift. As long as like Wilbur can say, here's where I see the shift because before I see this and after I see this, you're right. Right?
Rebound?
Do what?
Could a shift like rebound, like to go from like hopeful to a threat back to hopeful?
It could, but here's going to be my problem that I have. Our paragraphs are going to be designed by the shift. So for now, because I'm going to try to get y'all to write, I'm not going to try, I'm going to demand that y'all write the way that I want you to write, which means I write now until we figure things out. I just want one shift. Once we figure that format down, then, and you're doing well on it, then if you go, well, I see 2 shifts, then I'll show you how we adapt that shift, right? But we can see little shifts, and I'll show you how we outline those. But that's all going to come in skill 3. Y'all just keep working ahead of me. Okay. So, Wilbur, you're right. We can do it. We can look at it. But let's look at evidence. What else do we like in the evidence in that paragraph? Okay, so strongly condemning. So we have the action, the condemning.
World leaders are offering assistance.
Okay.
It shows that we're being supported.
Okay, so let's look at the actions. Condemning, joined, offered, joined, stand. So it's a collective actions. Okay. Do you see a pattern in there?
America as a whole, it's like on behalf of America, join together. Well, that's hard to say.
Looking at language. What do I always put hearts around? Okay, so now I see this one, right? But if I look at condolences and assistance, friends and allies, peace and security. Does that remind you of a pattern that we saw earlier? Ask. I saw the confusion. What?
Well, I understand, like, whenever we're grouping the 2 words together outside of a conjunction, but are we always just looking for conjunctions, or is it just whenever there's 2 things on?
I mean, not necessarily. Like, here you see that pattern started in the beginning, and so that repetitive pattern is stylistic, right? You sometimes will have this and this and this and this and this, so then the multiple conjunctions, now I'm looking at what's in that and why the multiple conjunctions in there, right? I also like to see when there's a shift between an and a but, or an and a so, because that's cause and effect, or cause and like a choice, right? So we want to take that. But this is a pattern that I've seen, so I want to continue it. So you see repetition, you see conjunctions. However, I want to teach you, do you know what parallel means? Have you learned what parallel means in math? What does parallel mean in math? Everybody always does that. Yep. Okay. So parallel means the same thing in sentence structure that has to line up, right? So when you have patterns like this where you have condolences and assistance, I'm going to draw my lines, right? Then you have friends and friends and allies. And then you have peace and security. So that's what we call parallelism, or ideas that are paralleled. So when I see parallelism, especially in the same like chunk, in the same like body paragraph, I like it because I can analyze, just like a list, multiple things. I can analyze, why are these things connected? Why are these things connected? And why do we have the and? Right? We'll get to that to skill 4. But I like parallel. It's also kind of a callback to friends and neighbors, men and women, right? All, like the list from earlier. All right, so if we look at rhetorical situation, what are we looking at here?
The audience is for like other nations.
Okay, so the audience, we want to look at our audience. We said like United Nations, yep, the UN would work, okay? What else would we work for audience?
Just allies in general.
Yep. Our allies. If we're also talking to the allies, who else are we talking to? Yep. Because what is he leveraging?
Our allies.
None of those things are on here. Okay. The desire for action. What else? Strength of the military. And the relationships, right, with our allies. I could probably write you a whole full body paragraph just on that evidence there and analysis. Alone, I could probably do about 12 sentences. Not that we count sentences, but I could have a full body paragraph just on that piece. All right. Tonight, I ask for your prayers for all those who grieve, for the children whose worlds have been shattered, for all whose sense of safety and security has been threatened, and I pray they will be comforted by a power greater than any of us, spoken through the ages in Psalm 23. Even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I fear no evil, for you are with me. Let's start at the beginning. Okay, what do we see in the beginning? Don't go to the Bible verse yet. Okay, tell us what an ascendant is.
All for the children, for those who are shattered. It's not like locking them up. It's all collective.
Okay, so you have for all those who grieve, for the children whose worlds have been shattered, for all whose sense of safety and security has been threatened. That is a list. What is that a list? Does it sound familiar to another list?
Yeah.
What list does it also sound familiar to? The what? Hi. Oh, thank you. What list does it reference?
Or like our maybe.
For all, what list? For all those who grieve, for the children, for whose worlds have been shattered, for all whose sense of safety.
Yeah, the list of like mom, dad.
Okay, the list, so that goes back to the list of victims. So that is a list, but we also, this is probably not on your piece of evidence or type of evidence, what I call a callback. Okay? A callback is, in comedy, a comedian will set like a story up, and then they'll go through their skit, and then at the end they'll call back to something they referenced earlier to get the laugh, right? We're not getting a laugh because of this. But same thing like in short stories, that they will set something up in the beginning and they will call back to it to remind you of what they said in the beginning, right? So this is like a call back to something that he referenced earlier. All right, now I'm going to talk about the psalm. When you have a Bible verse, unless you are well-versed, it's not a great word to choose, if you are well-versed in biblical stories and the Bible and can tell me the entirety of the value of that and the story that it comes from, or the history of using that verse. Stay away from it. Because all you end up saying is that, oh, he's saying a Bible verse, so he's relating it to God, and we all believe in God. But we don't. Okay? So when you overgeneralize like that, now there will be pieces where we have a footnote where there's a Bible verse referenced, and then it will tell you in a footnote what the story is from that Bible verse. Then they're telling you that the story from the Bible verse, so you go, okay, now I know the value of it. So unless you can be well informed on that, and there will be times where we have pieces where I'm like, let's look up that Bible verse and see what it means. Let's see what's in reference to, right? So we will do that. So otherwise, I would say what ends up happening is it just ends up being very topical. It ends up being what?
Summer.
There you go. Good answer. I saw you get scared for a minute. Okay. So here's the list. So what else? What rhetorical situation can we tie that to? Yep. Who would we connect it to in the audience? What audience?
Victim.
Yeah, I mean, that's an easy one, right? Because, I mean, they're actually in the list. What else can we tie it to in the rhetorical situation? Here's the struggle. If we can't tie it to multiple things, it may not be a great piece of evidence for us to actually choose when we go to write our essay. Right? Okay, why would you say speaker?
Because it's his role to comfort all the Americans.
All right. Good one. I like that. Okay. This is a day when all Americans from every walk of life unite and are resolved for justice and peace. America has stood down enemies before, and we will do so this time. None of us will ever forget this day, yet we go forward to defend freedom and all that is good and just in the world. Okay, I got to stop. Remind me on